Welcome to the Apocalyptic Supperclub, nourishment for dire times, where I plate up stories and ideas to feed the heart and mind and nourish our capacity to meet this very challenging moment of being alive in a drastically changing world. If you feel overwhelmed and discouraged about what is happening in this country and don't believe you make an impact, today's program will offer you good medicine and direct ways to see how you can take a stand, make a difference, and even experience joy while creating potent political change. In 2009, the Dalai Lama stood on a stage with a group of Nobel laureates and stated that the Western woman would save the world. The Western woman, with all of her privileges like freedom, rights, education, and resources, combined with innate feminine compassion, taken all together, he may have had a point, and one group of Western suburban women appears poised to prove him right. As extremism took root in the United States after the 2016 election, diverse women from the suburbs of Ohio decided to do something. 8 years later, that loose group of political newbies has evolved into a potent political platform 650,000 strong and growing. They call themselves Red, Wine, and Blue, where women are fighting extremism one friendship at a time, getting it done while having fun along the way. And what is it they're getting done? Well, it's a lot, and that's the subject of this show. Meet Julie Womack. Today, she is Red, Wine, and Blue's head of organizing. But in 2017, she was one of those suburban moms who felt disturbed by the growing political upheaval she was witnessing, and she decided to engage. Here she describes how Red, Wine, and Blue came into being through the efforts of a seasoned political veteran and media expert named Katie Paris, who encouraged these suburban moms to lean on something obvious to ramp up their nascent political efforts. And that obvious thing is called relational organizing.
Our founder was living in Ohio in 2018. She has worked in politics her whole career, lived in D.C., but had been in Ohio for a while. And after the 2018 election, which was that blue wave, I think we all remember Ohio really didn't follow suit with that. Katie started to kind of look at the data, and then it became really apparent to her that there were all of these women, especially in suburban areas, who had started just organically organizing themselves after the 2016 election. I happened to be one of them. It was a big wake-up call for a lot of people that this was not the direction we wanted for our country. This was not what we wanted for our children. And so we found people in our community who felt the same, and we were just beginning to organize. So Katie started to go around the state of Ohio and meet all of these different grassroots groups. I think there were like 15 or 20 in Ohio. And she recognized that, wow, there was power with these women and what they were doing, and that it would be such a benefit to support them with resources, amplifying their stories, getting media coverage, teaching them, actual organizing skills, because so many of us were just doing this because we wanted to make a change, but we'd never done it before. And that's me too, never done it before. And so she just recognized the power in that if we could harness what these women were already doing, keeping them engaged, what an impact that could be. I didn't know her before this, but I did meet her during her travels around Ohio. She hired me, and she hired another woman near Columbus, and she had been familiar with the concept of relational organizing and really thought it was a powerful thing to test. And our first task was around school boards in 2019, and it was to contact friends and ask them to talk to their friends about elections, and we used a platform to track that. And it was a small sample, but we saw really great results. And so really from the beginning, we've been all about this friend-to-friend organizing model because we know there's power behind it. And I will say, the last thing I'll say is that I have been very interested that since 2019, when this started, through now, I have seen such a shift in politicians leaning into friend-to-friend organizing. Like the first congressional race that I was really involved with after becoming a local organizer, nobody was doing relational. Last cycle, my local candidates were all doing relational. They all had the app. They were all trying to get people to contact friends about elections. So it's been an interesting shift.
Friends talking to friends about elections. What a concept. and how low tech. While the idea of relational organizing has been around for a while, it is finding its moment. Traditional media outlets like local papers are disappearing, while radio and television are increasingly being taken over by right-wing billionaires who use them as megaphones for potent propaganda. Social media is clogged with trolls and confusing levels of misinformation and disinformation, all of it creating a gaping void for confused voters. Ready and willing to fill that void is the informed and trusted friend. And supporting those willing to become informed friends is Red, Wine, and Blue, which is taking advantage of modern digital tools to educate, train, and develop their members' capacities to implement relational organizing at scale. How effective is it? Here's Julie Womack.
Get all those robo text messages, flyers come in the mail. And right now we know that people are not engaging with that information. They don't open their doors for strangers. They block the robo texts and they throw the flyers in the trash. But who are the people that your friends and family will engage with? That would be you. They will answer your text messages. They will take your phone calls and they will have those conversations with you. You are a tremendous influence on your friends and family. And there's actually data to back this up. So this is a YouGov poll that was asking, who do Americans trust most for accurate information about elections? Friends and family were by far and away the most trusted source. But we don't even have to rely just on polls. Red, Wine, and Blue has our own data. So for some context, presidential elections campaigns will pay millions and millions of dollars just to move voter turnout by as little as 1%. 1%, because that's what wins elections. Let's show you what we did in 2023, and it wasn't 1 or 2%. We actually increased voter turnout by over 10% doing friend-to-friend organizing. And for those of you who think, oh, all of my friends vote, let me show you. Our own volunteers saw an increase in voter turnout by over 7%. Not everybody votes like you think they do. And the great thing about friend-to-friend organizing is that it also breaks through partisan lines. 20% of the people we reached were Republicans and unaffiliated voters, because some of our networks are not our friends or people we know because of politics, right? They're our neighbors. They're the mom from the soccer field. So we reach people across that political divide.
So who are we trying to reach when we have these conversations? Are you doing this with everybody, or is it really targeted?
Who are we trying to reach? Okay, let's be really clear. You do need to talk to your like-minded friends, especially in local elections, because people are really often unaware of who the candidates are, who supports your values, who doesn't. So check in with them, make sure they know who to vote for, and make sure they have that plan to vote. Your moderate, non-political friends, absolutely we need to talk to all of them. Often they don't even know that there is an election, what's on the ballot. They definitely don't know who the candidates are, which means they often don't vote. You can change that by having those conversations. We want to concentrate on the people that we really want to make that influence with. Okay, the other thing I want you to think through is the men in your life. So I know when I open up my phone, it's a lot of women, a lot of friends, but we know that men in the last election were moving away in trends we did not like. And we know actually that Red, Wine, and Blue, we did reach men. As you can see, even in that presidential election year, we saw a 1 to 3% increase among our male contacts in our target states. So who you talk to can really make an impact.
Did you catch that? Relational organizing, the way Red, Wine, and Blue practices it, increases voter turnout by 10%. And apparently, it also increased voter turnout for Red, Wine, and Blue's own volunteers by more than 7%. It turns out, we don't vote as much as we'd like to hope we do. In fact, only 64% of eligible voters turned out in November 2024. Of those, a little less than 50% voted for Donald J. Trump. In fact, more voted for other candidates than voted for him. So this administration was brought into power with the backing of only around 32% of eligible voters. Obviously, there's bushels of low-hanging fruit waiting to be plucked if you want a different kind of politics than what we have right now. All it takes is for you to reach out and connect. Relational organizing stands to offer a multi-pronged approach, not only for getting out the vote, but also for healing communities. Our communities that have been deliberately divided by a cynical political machine. Although it has recently become clear to many that democracy itself is on the line, the authoritarian bent in American politics has been building for decades, and extremists are succeeding by deliberately disrupting our connections to each other. Historian Heather Cox Richardson has been a treasured guest on the Red Wine and Blue platform, helping to educate and inspire its members for years. And here in one of their regular online events, she offers a sobering context for how we find ourselves so bitterly divided today.
This is Authoritarianism 101. Authoritarians divide a population in half. They create friends and enemies. And this is, there is a political theory that came out of Germany about this by a guy named Carl Schmitt, who goes on to become a Nazi. And he basically says, so long as you can divide your people between friends and enemies, you can get those friends next to you and they will do anything against those enemies. But it's not just Schmitt who talks about that. Hannah Arendt talks about it in her work. Eric Hoffer talks about it as well. But you don't even need any of them. You can simply look at what the Republican Party began to do under Richard Nixon when Pat Buchanan, who was a speechwriter under Nixon, said what we really have to do is create what he called positive polarization. That is, we have to divide the country in two, because and it was positive in their minds, because if you convinced the Republican voters and the independents that the Democrats were the enemies, you would get them to turn out and vote.
The beauty of relational organizing is that it directly disrupts this friends versus enemies paradigm. And it also highlights that we are already friends with so many of our so-called enemies, and this is where women's real power begins. Enter Trouble Nation. Trouble Nation is Red Wine and Blue's suite of relational organizing resources intended to help women start a local group, inspire its members, and develop its potential to exercise political power through education, connection, and respectful persuasion. Again, here's Julie Womack.
So what the Trouble Nation program does is, well, just like I was talking about in Ohio, where all these groups were organically organizing, we want to encourage that local organizing to happen anywhere and everywhere across the country. In fact, we even have groups who are expats in Mexico and Europe who have joined Trouble Nation. But the goal is to get people to start locally organizing, start a group in your city where you live. And then we want to help support that work. By joining Trouble Nation, we will get your group started. We will give you support. We will give you resources. We also do virtual trainings, our troublemaker trainings, where we really help people if they're not quite sure, they're ready to get on the Trouble Nation platform, but they're thinking about it. They can join one of these events and really see, what does it take to start a group? What are the things I need to think through before I do that? And then what's the impact that I can have? So we will train people organizing skills. We have an amazing resource library of messaging and explainer documents, videos, training them on all different aspects of organizing. We also will network. So if you are organizing in your local community and somebody in the next county starts a group, we're going to make sure you get connected. And then I think the biggest piece too is we help you grow your groups. We have members. I think we're over 650,000 members across the country. And so you start a local group, and I'm in Mason, Ohio. So we start a local group here. We can look at our membership and invite people and to say, hey, someone just started a group near you. So we can help grow these groups. We support them. The other thing that I like about Trouble Nation is that we are not a top-down model. These are not chapters. We are not telling them what they need to do. We are not telling them they need to focus on. We ask that they share our values and they uphold the things that we care about. But if they want to focus on their local school board, that's great. If they are a group that really wants to get behind reproductive rights issues or support members of the LGBTQ plus community, go for it. Whatever they want to organize around, we are not dictating that, but we are there to support that organizing. And we've seen amazing growth. We launched this program in September of 23, and we already have over 830 groups across the country, all 50 states plus expats. So it's just been amazing to see the creativity of what these women are creating and coming up with. and the sheer volume of people that they are bringing in from their community to grow these groups. I remember a couple who started and all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, we went from nothing to 430 in a month. And they couldn't believe that all these people were finding them. But there are so many people right now who are hungry for that community and feel very alone where they are. So it really is an amazing program. I'm really, really, really proud of it.
Julie, where did you get the name Trouble Nation? Did that come from John Lewis or something else?
We call our members troublemakers because we really like the notion of going out and making that good trouble in your community. I always joke that actually, we got the name because my city council here where I live called my group that was organizing troublemakers because we started showing up and they were suddenly being opposed, which hadn't happened before. So that is where the name Trouble Nation came from. Part of this is just getting people together, building those relationships, and then hopefully moving into action. And, people do it at all different levels and take all different steps and get there at different times. But it's building those relationships, and it's truly life-changing. The people that I organized with here in my city, I didn't know a single one of them before the 2016 election, like not a single one. And I would now consider them some of the best friends that I have. And we've made an amazing progress where we live, and we're really proud of the impact that we've had. I think the other thing people don't recognize is that everyone feels like they need to know everything about everything, and you don't. You can just get started. And that's what we tell people all the time. Just get started. You're going to invite a couple of friends to join you, and then they're going to invite a couple of friends, and they organically grow. Now, I have trained thousands of people on organizing, and I have never once had somebody come back to me and say, when I started this group and nobody joined. It's always, wow, 100 people joined in the first 2 weeks, and I don't know what to do. But the other thing that I think people fail to recognize is that everybody who comes and is part of the group has a talent, right? Everybody has something to offer, whether it's you are a graphic designer is your day job, or you know how to write great social media content, or you're just super organized. Maybe you don't want to be the one speaking at the school board meeting, but you'll be the one to track who's showing up or putting those RSVPs out online or bringing the snacks to the meeting. Like, everybody has a skill. And if you tap into those things, you can be such a powerful group. It's so much of his everyday skills. It's things moms are already doing. We're multitasking masters. So tapping into that, it's really a very powerful force. And I think it gets underestimated a lot.
It's true. We often overlook or take for granted the value of what we're already good at.
The other thing that's so powerful with women is that women are just very connected in their communities, because everything from your book club to your neighborhood get together to your kids' school. And like I said, it's not politics. Some of these women are much more conservative than me. We don't agree on every issue, but we still have those bonds. And that's why I think they can make such a huge impact.
In 2025, Red, Wine, and Blue and their Trouble Nation groups held an impressive 4,212 events that were attended by nearly 85,000 people. Their membership grew by nearly 200,000, and their participation exploded to more than 800 local groups. Clearly, these women are on fire and demonstrate a growing hunger for effective engagement in our political system. If you ever feel you are alone during this time of upheaval, you can reflect on these tens of thousands of women rolling up their sleeves, getting it done, and inviting you to join them. We'll be back with more about Red, Wine, and Blue's innovative ways of mobilizing right after this short break.
This is Austin Powers, baby. You're listening to the only radio station groovier than the BBC.
What? You mean K-Squid?
K-Squid.
K-Squid, isn't it?
K-Squid, KSQD Santa Cruz. Online anytime at ksqd.org.
Yeah, baby.
Welcome back to the Apocalyptic Supper Club, where I serve up stories to nourish your capacity to know you matter and you can make a difference. The focus of our show today is Red, Wine, and Blue, once a loose consortium of Midwestern suburban women, but now a national political organizing platform that boasts nearly 700,000 members, and it's growing every day. Why? Because it is intelligent and values-driven, and it offers its members top-notch resources and opportunities to educate their political minds as well as build strong community-based relationships, all with one goal in mind: to fight authoritarianism and have fun along the way. Which begs the question, can fighting authoritarianism actually be fun? Julie Womack thinks it's essential.
Politics can be hard. It can be heavy. Obviously, there's a lot of negative stuff coming at us right now. I would love to get away from the notion, though, that like everything has to be serious all the time and we must always be like out there marching and protesting and you can't have any fun doing this. Because number one, that is just not the way to sustain activism. People are not going to do that. They're going to drop off. So like at Red, White, and Blue, we try to have fun and joy because we're building friendships. We're building relationships. That is why people stay involved. It's not just because, you know, they like making signs and going to the protest. I mean, that's great. And it does make you feel better, but they're coming back time after time because they're building these relationships. And so we try to build joy and fun into the politics because that's what keeps people involved for the long term. For example, we do a lot of craftivism. So we'll have local get-togethers where we have organizers and they'll just get together and do some kind of arts and craft and maybe talk about an issue or talk about campaigns. We have something called Bitch and Stitch. We also have a happy, unhappy hour. We do a banned book bingo. So it's just an event where we bring people in. We have bingo cards made up with different banned books. And then we call out the book and they play bingo. And then we tell them why the book was banned. And honestly, I ran one of those and it was just like 100 people showed up and they just were having a good time, but they were also learning. And they said to me later, they were like, wow, that was so fun. But like, I actually learned a lot about why books are being banned. And you know what they did then? They went out and talked to their friends about that event and about the books. So the joy and the fun is actually really productive too. You got to find a little humor. You got to have a little fun with it. While you're also then doing the harder work of saving democracy and building that like local organizing structure.
That hard work of saving democracy actually is hard, because if the lust for power depends on divide and conquer, building people power depends on unity and collaboration. But it's not easy. Getting folks on the same page so they can effectively stand together requires layers of education, training, skill building, and coordination. But most importantly, it requires quality relationships because it's hard to divide people who actually know and care about each other. Here's Julie Womack again on the fundamental relational skills required for their vision.
We have several goals. So number one is we do want to educate, right? You can't talk to your friends and family about issues if you feel like you really don't understand them. So a big piece of what we do is just running programs to educate our members. So twice a week, we do an issue-based event. We try to do then training events to teach people the basics of organizing, you know, how to start a group in your community, how to request records like a FOIA request, how to work with the media, all those skills that just don't come naturally. But around having conversations, we try, number one, to educate so people feel confident going out having those conversations. But then what we teach people is that you need to find that common value, that shared connection with somebody. First of all, it's just asking them why, you know, like, why do you believe this? Why do you think this? What are your thoughts about this issue? Listening to what they're saying. Don't be sitting there crafting your answer and your statistics in your head. Like, really listen to what this person is saying. And what you'll find is that a lot of times it is something you can find a shared value around. So for example, if someone's talking about, they heard some information about books in a library that is scary to them in their child's school, you know, the bottom line is they're worried about their kids' safety, and everyone's worried about kids' safety. And so what we teach people is you find that common ground and you say, well, you know, I hear what you're saying, and it sounds like you're worried about our children. Well, I am too, and I want them to be safe and protected at school. That's why. And then you share your values or you share your thoughts, because when you do that, but you're wrong, or here's some statistics, it turns people off. You got to find that common ground with them and then show why that common ground that you have actually leans into what you believe. And it's just a friendlier way to do that. And if you do it in a non-judgmental way, those people are more likely to come back and have another conversation with you when maybe they hear something that upsets them or they're not so sure about an information they just heard on the radio. The other thing we teach a lot is about not repeating disinformation. It's so easy to repeat something back that just sounds to you like it's crazy and be like, that is just not true. That is not happening with guns or books or whatever. And what that really does is reinforce the bad information. That's just how our brains work. It reinforces it. So we try really hard to tell people, don't repeat disinformation. If someone says something like that to you, you can just say no and then share your accurate information. Or you can ask them, where did you hear that? There's a lot of bad information out there. There's a lot of people who have a political agenda about scaring you and sharing information that is not accurate. So being really upfront about that, but not repeating disinformation is so, so important.
Today, misinformation and deliberate disinformation are a scourge, creating staggering obstacles to all forward progress. So Julie Womack's point here about quality education and skillful communication points to Red, Wine, and Blue's fundamental strategy. A rich menu of educational options are provided to meet women where they are at, from written primers on their website to hyper-focused short-form podcasts and long-form civics trainings offered on YouTube, just to name a few. All this educational information is the basic fuel of organizing. But for a movement to take off, all this informational fuel requires ignition. Fred Ross, who trained Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta in the nonviolent political organizing skills that transformed the farm workers' rights movement, once said, "A good organizer is a social arsonist who goes around setting people on fire." Red, Wine, and Blue puts the spark to the tinder with dynamite guests that fire up their membership. Women like Jasmine Crockett, Heather Cox Richardson, Gretchen Whitmer, Stacey Abrams, and many, many others. Here's one I found particularly thrilling. By now, many have heard about the statistic of the 3.5%, a seemingly magical number for those desperate to see the fall of autocracies. Political scientist Dr. Erica Chenoweth of Harvard's Kennedy School put this idea forward after decades of studying how nonviolent resistance over the past century successfully brought down authoritarian regimes. Her research indicated that it takes 3.5% of a population engaging in sustained, strategic, nonviolent resistance to bring down an illegitimate government. Red, Wine, and Blue hosted Erica Chenoweth on one of their community online events. The following clip brings some credence to the Dalai Lama's view that women have an outsized role to play in setting the world right.
I was doing a lot of workshops with activists from around the world, talking about why civil resistance works and what are the main mechanisms for understanding how to change the balance of power using mass mobilization. And in these workshops, it was like almost strikingly common that by the second or third day of a week-long seminar, the women who were in attendance at the seminars would like revolt. And what they would say is, you're not telling about women's role in this, though. And we know from where we organize that it's basically all us. Like, we are not just coming up with the strategy, but we're innovating new tactics. Like, we're the ones who do all the work on the organizing on the ground. We're driving these movements. We're the leaders of these movements. And somebody kind of put out the proposition that that is part of what makes them effective. And being somewhat of a skeptic, I thought, well, somebody should study whether that's true. Whether, first of all, that women are, more represented in nonviolent movements than men, and also whether their participation, their leadership, their tactical innovation is what's driving the success of this overall arc of successful campaigns. So together with my collaborator, Zoe Marks, we built into the data set of mass movements over the last 125 years an indicator for the level of involvement of women on the front lines, like whether it was extensive, where like women were basically and equally represented to men on the front lines and frontline roles in the movement, or whether they were more kind of in support roles, or whether they were excluded from the movements. And then we looked at a variety of other indicators around the gender kind of composition and dynamics of the movements. And what we actually found there is that this is like one of the key least reported indicators of success, that the more extensive participation of women on the front lines that we observed in mass movements, 670 mass movements over the last 125 years, the more likely those movements were to succeed. And this is because mass movements win when they elicit defections from the opponent, their pillars of support. So whether the pillars are security forces, economic and business elites, state media, civil servants, cultural and religious authorities, people who are important in their positions in society and whose cooperation is necessary for the status quo to obtain. And so what we're finding is that movements that are very large tend to win more than movements that are small. And surprise, surprise, if women are involved and equally represented on the front lines, the movements are way bigger than movements that are unfriendly toward, hostile to, or even exclusionary toward women. One of the things that's so striking, though, is that it's not just that it doubles the participation rates of these movements. It increases the participation rates of movements by 7.5 times. So in other words, the movements in which women were equally represented were like orders of magnitude larger than the movements that excluded them. Why is that? Because as we can see on this call, when women participate on the front lines, they bring others with them, right? So it's not just that you're getting a woman for a man, it's that you're bringing a whole group of people together, a community. That is exactly the issue. It's that women have certain kinds of social power. And that's not necessarily innate. It's not, something that women are born with. It's that the roles that women are typically assigned, the gender roles women are typically assigned in society, and that they are socialized to, make them much more capable of exercising huge levels of social power when they need to. They can bring others with them. They have networks that are important. They understand who needs to be where and are very good with organizing, multitasking, and logistics. And all of those things end up really coming in handy in the context of a national emergency and a mass mobilization.
Wow. Women's active participation in movements increases turnout by 7.5 times. Authoritarians and extremists everywhere fear women, which is why they hobble women's rights, attempt to silence women's voices through intimidation, and work to rob them of their reproductive freedom. But the women of red, wine, and blue are having none of it. In fact, they are leaning into the very essence of feminine strength and the power that can come through slowing down, going inside, and accessing the nourishing wisdom of embodiment. Here they bring in therapist, teacher, political organizer, and best-selling author of What It Takes to Heal, Prentice Hemphill. In this excerpt from the Red, Wine, and Blue podcast, How to Not Lose Your Shit with Katie Paris and LaFonda Cousin, Prentice Hemphill shares ideas on how mindful embodiment can powerfully impact political organizing.
A lot of us have become, in recent years at least, more comfortable talking about systems, the kind of systems we live in and under, what those systems do, kind of what the logic is at the core of those systems. But those systems aren't just existing somewhere else in the world. It is us through how we act and what we do that actually create and recreate those systems over and over again. So I'll use an example. If we think about, norms about race, for example, my mom grew up in a time where the world was bifurcated. It was segregation. And that world said that these people can't associate with these people. Now, that's not only a rule that's kind of legislated, it becomes a relationship set. It becomes the way certain people speak to each other, look at each other, behave near each other, the ways that they perceive each other's humanity and the things that they're willing to do or not do for each other. It becomes embodied. That logic of that time becomes embodied in people, and it gets shared through relationship, and it gets shared through how people actually treat one another and how they treat themselves. So that's one example, but we can think of a million other examples of the ways in which both systems and norms become deeply embedded, not just as ideas or as systems in some other structure outside of us, but actually become how we relate to our own lives, our own bodies, and each other. It shapes how we experience life. A lot of my work over the past decade or so has been particularly working with movement organizations, Black movement organizations. And there's a school called Black Organizing for Leadership and Dignity, which I've been a teacher with for a long time. And one of the programs we do is to go to base building organizations in cities that are working on campaigns. And we bring in, some education around transformative organizing, some around political education. And then the piece that I lead is around embodiment. And so one of the contrasts we have is that if they're working on a campaign, we bring participants in from all over the country to support their campaign, and we might do canvassing or door knocking or whatever it is. And the first day we do it and we're trying to meet our numbers. The second day I teach them a simple practice of centering, how to ground in their bodies and how to stay present with themselves. And then we go do the door knocking or the canvassing. And the difference in the quality of conversations, the people that actually want to show up to the meeting, what translates from an interaction into actually people showing up changes dramatically when the organizers have that skill in their tool belt to be able to listen with presence, to be able to, actually receive, to be able to connect with somebody else. It changes the whole experience. And so I remember working on a campaign in Ohio, and they were really about their numbers, like how many numbers they got. And the second day when we did the centering practice, not only did we meet and exceed the numbers of the first day, but the kinds of conversations that people were reporting having had shifted dramatically, because people can tell if you care. People can tell if you're trustworthy. People can tell if you believe what it is that you're saying. If you have a vision behind you, people can feel that. It's not just an idea. People can feel it in how you show up. And so if you bring that forward, it's more compelling to people. So that's one thing I would do, is that if I'm building a project, I'm bringing in these tools that I think help people become more aware of what it is that they are communicating, their own internal congruence and their ability to connect. I say to organizers all the time, are you available for connection or not? You might be knocking on somebody's door, but you might actually not in an embodied way be available for connection. And that's going to change what happens. So whatever it is that I would choose to do, I would bring that as an essential component of it.
Prentice Hemphill's declaration that we can only transform the world if we are willing to transform ourselves first reflects true empowerment. Inner activism is the most vital of all activisms because it is through how we act and what we do that systems are actually created and recreated. Sometimes it is hard to grok the truth that more fundamental than changing our minds intellectually is changing our perception of who we are and what we can do. That's deep internal work, and it's hard to effect. Let's face it, almost everything related to politics and the news that reports on politics is pretty depressing. Why? Because it is demoralizing. We are consistently told what is wrong. We are rarely told what we can do to fix it. And it is a psychological truth that negative stories and experiences repetitively reinforced leads to learned helplessness. It's a real condition that impacts our brains and our neurochemistry. Does civic learned helplessness feel inexorable? Yes. Is it the truth? No, not by a long shot. What's the cure? Do something. And so before we dig into what you can do, we are going to take a short break.
You may have a nice beach and everything, man. When we go someplace here, we come for one reason. And that reason is to rock.
A rockin' blast from the past, Wednesday afternoons from 1 to 3 p.m. Relics and Psychedelics, only here on The Squid, KSQD Santa Cruz.
I'm doing my part, Daddy.
Welcome back to the Apocalyptic Supperclub, where I feed you resources to whet your appetite for inspired action through changing our minds, building community, and finding strategies that work for creating real change. Today, we are focused on how the organization Red, Wine, and Blue does all this through leveraging the power of women's capacity to care and connect. Reading the news or paying attention to political social media can lead to intense overwhelm and feelings of powerlessness. Human beings are built for competency, and a sense of helplessness is actually damaging to our nervous system. Often, the best medicine for this is simply to do something. Here again is Julie Womack, Red, Wine, and Blue's head of organizing.
Everybody has their moments where they feel overwhelmed by this because we're human beings. So the onslaught of things happening, the rights we see being taken away, it's hard not to have a negative reaction to that or feel that anxiety. But the antidote to that is the things we've been talking about, and that is building community, and that is taking action. If you just sit on the sidelines and feel all those anxieties or frustrations or anger, that's not good for anybody. So I know not everybody is ready to jump into a rally or form a Trouble Nation group. I know that there's different levels of comfort, but I guarantee that if you do something, no matter how small, it will make you feel better. And then I think that as you take those small steps, it will lead to bigger steps. We just launched a brand new guide, which is totally about this topic. It's called 160 Ways to Change the World Without Losing Your Shit. And within it, we have everything from protests and rallies to advocacy to mutual aid, just helping people in your community who right now really need it. There's all different ways. And this guide, it's got great information, and it literally has 160 things that you can do. So, if you're contemplating and you just want a little bit of an idea, great, go check that out. If you already have a local group and you're doing work, it's a great guide, to think of things that your group can be doing. I guarantee that the antidote to the feelings that we're all having is finding your community, finding the people that agree with you, surrounding yourself with them, even if it's not being political. Like you said, if it's just going out to a trivia night or just hanging out for a happy hour, it really does help you. And then the second thing is just take those small action steps. It doesn't have to be every day, but doing something really does make you feel better. I just went to one of my local protests, and my girlfriend, who very much aligns with me, but doesn't come out and do a ton of stuff politically, she called me and she's like, I think I want to go, but didn't want to go alone. I went with her. We met people there. We talked. She was so happy that she went. She felt like she had done something, and it really, really did help her. So just take that first step, no matter how small, and get involved.
Julie, do you have any success stories that you could share about women who took action and were surprised or inspired by the results?
Sure. I did a troublemaker training on just how to organize, and it was about book bans, kind of how to fight back against book bans. And a woman messaged me later because she had been part of the training. And she said she lives in upstate New York, where it was red, more of a red district than you think of as New York. And they had started to get hints that they were going to have some people trying to ban some books at their school. So she came to the training because she wasn't quite sure what she was going to do, but she said she left the training thinking, okay, maybe I'll just try this and see what happens. So they reserved a room at the local building, and she said she and her friend who were doing this put out 25 chairs. She's like, Julie, 100 people showed up. We had to go get more chairs. And she just couldn't believe it. And then they made a plan, and they met again, and they went to the school board, and they actually defeated the book bans because they made such a big noise where they lived. And then they kept organizing, and they actually ended up working on some campaigns and defeating some of the school board members who were on the more extreme end, who, supported the book banning. And I brought her on many times to speak because she just was so inspiring, because she just was not sure this is what she was going to do. And then suddenly she's running this really large group, and they were really effective right away because people were looking, most people in her community didn't believe in banning books. They just need somebody to step up and be vocal about it, and people are willing to join.
When we open ourselves to possibility and act to break the spell of learned helplessness, it ignites latent potentials put to sleep by endless cycles of political negativity. Actual stories of showing what can be done are both inspiring and contagious. When we hear real people speak, we can see ourselves in what they're doing, like this story from a North Carolina group. In this excerpt, you will hear the voices of 3 women: Cindy, a member of Red, Wine, and Blue in North Carolina, in conversation with Julie Womack, Red, Wine, and Blue's head of organizing, and Tanya, Red, Wine, and Blue's North Carolina program director.
I was involved with another group that I joined after the election called the Citizens Climate Lobby, and I attended a lobby day with them. And I was looking at the bills that they were opposing or supporting, and I have a background in state government, and I have had some exposure to the General Assembly in North Carolina. So I was tracking some legislation, and I thought, we really ought to do this. Red, Wine, and Blue ought to do this. We could teach women how to lobby. We could teach them how to go to their General Assembly and meet their legislators and actually do advocacy face to face. So my group wanted to do it, and a couple of the other local groups kind of wanted in on it. And I approached Red, Wine, and Blue, Janice and Tanya, and they had a brigade set up where we're watching the General Assembly. And I said, watching them is one thing, but talking to them is something else. I said, could we do this?
Let's talk to Tanya about that. So Tanya, I mean, you work for Red, Wine, and Blue. You're an organizer professionally, but that doesn't mean you've done a lobby day. Have you ever set up a lobby day before?
I've been to plenty, but I have never organized one. And when Janice came to me with Cindy's idea, and I was like, yikes. I mean, legitimately, I was just like a little overwhelmed, but I was so surprised once we started working towards it, how each person was able to take a little piece and pull it all together. And so it became something that was almost joyful. I mean, we would meet every Monday at 12 noon on a Zoom, and we kind of go through the plan, and everybody would have their piece that they were going to provide. And, Cindy and her team, amazing. I mean, she had the idea, she had the background, she had the experience. But, nobody else really had that experience. But we did find out what the other women that were going to join us, the pieces that they could do. And so we were able to divide everything up very nicely. And look, we did it. And that was the bottom line. And I'm so excited and glad that we were able to, make this happen, because it really inspired so many other women that were there that day. And it's actually got them to thinking about all the ways that they can do something. I mean, get into action. It may not be a lobby day, but they can do something, and they know that now. And Cindy's just been such an inspiration, and all the people that were working with us. So super proud of her.
So Cindy, tell us just a little bit, just briefly, you did all this planning, you worked with Tanya and Janice, who's on our Red, Wine, Blue team. This happened. I hear you had a great turnout. I heard you had media. So tell me, how did it go for you, and what did other people who were there tell you about it?
I don't think it could have gone any better. We had roughly 75 women and then some men. We had appointments with about 20 different legislators. We made sure that everybody that came at least got to go to the office of their legislators, both on the House side and the Senate side. We distributed 170 position papers to every single member of the General Assembly in North Carolina. They got a folder with position papers on the bills that we wanted them to oppose, a one-pager on who Red, Wine, and Blue was, because one important part of this is they know who we are now, and a lot of us were wearing red, wine, and blue shirts. We had a read-in on the lawn of banned books. One of the bills we were fighting was a book ban, and we had, I think, 35 camp kids there reading banned books on the lawn, and they all got to take some home. And they got a tour of the General Assembly as well. And most of them didn't even know really probably what it was. So the feedback we got was excellent. 100% of the people that responded to our survey said they had positive experience. I got to tell you, I cried reading some of the reviews. One woman said, I would have never believed I could have done this. And I'm crying right now while I'm writing this. And it couldn't have gone any better. And a lot of that had to do with the support we got from Red, Wine, and Blue. I mean, we could have never done this on our own.
We appreciate that. And so, Tanya, just last question. What did you learn from this whole experience? Especially what we're talking about tonight is like women leading the way to build community and stand up for our rights.
We're just all superheroes. I mean, we're just so powerful when we come together and do this work. I mean, we have so many responsibilities as mothers, as caretakers for parents, as wives, as business owners, students, all of those things. But what I really learned is that if each person come together and they do a little bit, we can do tremendous things in the community. Like, you're not just sitting around, you're actually doing something. You're a part of something. You're a part of a movement. And most importantly, you can be a part of big change.
Knowing we can be a part of big change doesn't happen until we actually do something and have the experience that shows us it can be done. Our seeming opponents and obstacles are often more pliant than we realize, but we won't know until we try. It is in our trying that opens doors where once there were walls. Soon, the 2026 primary season will be upon us. Reports of massive voter purging are rising, continuing dangerous trends from 2024. So get out the vote efforts will be paramount in 2026. Red, Wine, and Blue provides powerful tools for those willing to shore up the electoral process through friend-to-friend organizing, and it's called Rally Together. It's a suite of resources available through their website and the new Red, Wine, and Blue app. Here's Julie Womack.
Okay, so how do we do this? Well, becoming part of our Rally Together team means we are all going to join onto our Rally platform. And this is a place where you can track your outreach, get information to share, and also see the impact you're making. Our Trouble Nation team in Northern Virginia, called the Childless Cat Ladies, awesome name, they call Rally your personal voter data address book. Everything you need is right in your phone, right on Rally, for you to become amazing at friend-to-friend organizing. So one of the things that's amazing about Rally is that you can access at your fingertips public voting information about your friends. You can see who votes all the time, who sometimes skips an election, so you know who to prioritize. And then in certain target swing states, Rally is actually going to help you track, did your friend already vote? Did they ask for an absentee ballot? All this information will be right there at your fingertips every time you have a conversation with your friends. The next thing Rally will do is we will give you content and information to share. So we will give you a description of an action. We will give you a sample message that you can just copy, paste in text or email to your friend. So you don't have to think through what to say. And we will do this all through the election cycle so that you can keep in contact with those important people. And then when it gets time to vote, we're going to help you with some customized vote plans. You can help your friends make a plan to vote, giving them information about polling locations. So if you live in one city and your friend lives all the way in another city, you're going to be able to still get them that information, again, right in your phone. So how do you do this? It's easy. Red, Wine, and Blue has an app. So grab your phone, go into your app store and search for Red, Wine, and Blue to download it. Then once you are into the app, you are going to start by going to the Trouble Nation tile on the home screen, and then it's magic time.
And magic is the right word. When you have quality information, effective tools, and the willingness to build relationships, you have a chance to move the needle toward a world that can work for all, not just the few. And surprisingly, despite the drama and draw of national elections, where we can create the most magic is locally in our own towns and counties, as Julie Womack describes here.
There is so much happening, and I know there is so much focus at the federal level, but to be totally honest, you have a lot more power at the local level, and the things that happen at the local level actually have a bigger impact on your family. Let's say you have a neighbor who's very worried about immigration issues right now and worried that their family is going to be broken up. And if you say to them, hey, I called my senator to tell them I don't like what's going on, versus I went to the school board to make sure that they had policies in place to protect your child in our school district, that's a much bigger impact in terms of like what you're doing to help that family and to make them feel, safer and more secure where they live. Also, there are so many ways for us to get involved and actually impact local races, which honestly often can be won by like a few votes. I've seen examples of those local races that are won by even 1 or 2 votes. So when you organize and you turn out people who may not even know there's an election going on, by having those friend-to-friend conversations, you can flip seats. You can make a huge difference in local elections. The other thing is this building power. So many people who become candidates at your school board or your city council level become then your next state legislator and then move on to higher office. So it really is a way to start building power. I think you mentioned earlier, Christine, that people come in for an election and they like talk to everybody and then they get up and they leave, right? Well, with local organizing, you're building power year after year after year. You're bringing more people in. And so when these local elections come, when state elections come, and even when the federal elections come, you have already had these people organized and they're ready to be involved. They're ready to turn their friends out to vote. They're ready to get involved in campaigns. I can definitely see that in my own community. We started our local group, and I think the first meeting we had like 60 people, which by the way, we were pretty happy with 60. We thought that was amazing. Now we have about 800 people in our Facebook group. We have over 1,000 signed up for our Dem Club that we run. on the email list. We have a local PAC. We have had candidates finally win elections here. So the power behind that local organizing really just cannot be understated.
Isn't it a relief to know that the best you can do is to start right where you are and with the people you already know? The double whammy of the far right's power grab, coupled with the ineptitude of leadership from those on the left, has created a moment of clarity. Democracy comes down to its people, and many are realizing it is up to them to protect freedom and the rights enshrined in our Constitution. As daunting as this sounds, it may be the making of us as a nation. Red, Wine, and Blue provides an entire ecosystem of resources and support to help their members evolve into a new kind of citizen, one who knows what needs to be done and that they can do it. When a person is empowered to make a difference, they become more of who they are. They awaken spiritually. And America is ripe for just such an awakening. I am Christine Barrington, and this has been the Apocalyptic Supper Club, Nourishment for Dire Times. I hope you have been fed inspiration and encouragement hearing about the prodigious efforts of Red, Wine, and Blue to empower us to claim the true meaning of we the people. I want to thank Julie Womack for taking time out of her busy organizing schedule to be interviewed, and thanks to Red, Wine, and Blue for their permission to air excerpts from their online offerings. Links to the full-length videos that were excerpted here are included in our show notes, and you can find them at ksqd.org, along with additional links related to content shared during this program. Theme music was Dire Ghost by Blue Dot Sessions and Hopeful Journey Warm Longing from Pixabay. K-Squid, community radio for all of the Monterey Bay on 89.5, 89.7, and 90.7 FM.